When Sherry let me know that we were going to have this event in Nashville, that was about the same time I saw this social media post. And if you're not from the US, just know that this is eerily accurate. That, especially where I grew up in the Midwest, that there are all sorts of city names that are named after European locations or some misspelling or mispronunciation of Native American names. I did look up Nashville. It wasn't founded by a guy named Nash, but it was named after a guy named Nash, a Revolutionary War general. But anyway, on to the actual presentation. One of the things I wanted to touch on this morning, actually, the full title is Wireshark Progress, Problems, and Plans, and that's intentionally vague, but I will be touching on each of those subjects throughout the presentation. But progress-wise, we are working towards both Wireshark 5.0 and StratoShark 1.0, which I'm hoping that we'll release sometime in October, but we'll see how that turns out. Roland's session after this is going to go into a lot more detail about what's coming in Wireshark 5, but I did want to touch on a couple of things. One is that we're getting a new application icon. And there's this whole history here and a whole bunch of trivia involved with this. As you can see, the first couple of logos don't have the fin. And if I noticed a whole bunch of people are new, I don't know how familiar you are with the history of the project, but Wireshark wasn't always called Wireshark. It was originally called Ethereal. And the reason for that is because when I was developing the program, I had a fresh computer science degree, and at one point I learned that when Bob Metcalfe developed Ethernet, he named it Ethernet because a few centuries ago, people saw that, okay, there's this sun over here and the earth over here. The sun is shining light on us. The light has to get there somehow, but there can't be a vacuum. How could that possibly exist? So they came up with the concept of the luminiferous ether. And that's where Bob Metcalfe got the name for Ethernet, from this concept that people had to fill a literal void with this made-up stuff, and he chose that name. So when I started working on a protocol analyzer, I thought, well, that's a really cool name, and I flipped through the dictionary, an actual paper dictionary at the time, and looked up words that started with ether, and I ran across ethereal, and I thought, well, that's a really cool name. I'm going to use that. And so for the first, was it 8 years of the project, we were ethereal. And we had this stylized E logo that I managed to cobble together. It started out very basic, and that very basic logo from '98 is, there's a little bit of a story behind that as well, because we had that logo on the website for a long time. And my goal very early on initially with the project website, was to fit the whole front page into as few Ethernet frames as possible. And so I came up with this really tiny minimal image that fit into an Ethernet frame, and then the actual HTML portion fit into another Ethernet frame, and it loaded like that. Which is quite different from nowadays. You load up a web page, and the joke is you're downloading something with the equivalent size of the original Doom game or Quake. I mean, that's how they measure websites nowadays. The one from 2001, I managed to get this nice rendered 3D thing, and I still have a soft spot in my heart for that. I look at that and go, oh, that was such a nice logo, and I really have to wonder if we kept the name, what the logo would look like today. But as you can see, in 2006, things changed, and that's because in the mid-2000s, we had a bunch of Windows users, and we had a bunch of Windows users using Wi-Fi. And as we all know, Wi-Fi is this perfect, flawless technology. It is not. And people were having trouble getting Wi-Fi up, working correctly, and they're trying to diagnose problems. And the thing was, at the time, if you had a wireless NIC on your Windows system and you put that wireless NIC into monitor mode, for some reason, whoever wrote those drivers thought that it would be an excellent idea if you just shut the adapter down. That's not the result that you wanted, and so I got in touch with the people who had developed WinPCAP, which was the network driver that we used for packet capture at the time on Windows. A couple of guys named Laura Stagiani and Gianluca Verni. And they said, yeah, we can fix this problem, and oh, by the way, would you like to join us at this company we started up in Davis, California? And Janice talked about this last night at the welcome dinner. And so I joined them, and I talked to my employer at the time and said, hey, I need the name Ethereal, and they said, no, we registered that trademark, sorry, you can't have it. Well, we just couldn't come to an agreement. So we kind of came to the conclusion that we needed to rename the project, and so everybody at the company came together, and the new company, and said, okay, we need a new name for this, can't be Ethereal. And let's just come up with a list of candidate names. I think Loris was the one who actually came up with the name Wireshark, but I took that list of names and went to our official style consultant, who is my wife, Karen. She dresses me. And I showed her that list, and she has this innate sense of style and innate sense for what works and what doesn't, and immediately zeroed in on the name Wireshark, and that's the name that we went with. But that meant coming up with a new name. We got the new name, we needed a new logo, and that's, and I came up with, the fin logo that you see on the website nowadays. But as you can see, the fin changed direction. And there's a reason for that. And there's another bit of trivia here that now you guys don't understand. There's a whole bunch of Wireshark trivia, and I'm laying some trivia on you that I've never told anybody before here. So just to set that expectation. Anyway. The reason the fin changed was because I was sitting there thinking, I'm uprooting my family, my wife and daughter and I. We are moving halfway across the country from Missouri to California, and that's not the direction we're going. We're going that way. And so that's why the direction of the fin changed. In 2013, we finally moved away from my amateur designs for logos and for application icons. We actually hired a professional. The 2013 version was designed by a guy named Elliot Aldrich. He did an excellent job, and we stuck with that fin for a very long time. But this year, in 2026, we are revamping that application icon, and we hired a guy named Aaron Knoll this time around. And not only do we have a more modernized icon, but it also is compliant with Apple's requirements for liquid glass. So I got somebody opened up a bug report last week, and as a matter of fact, and said, your application icon doesn't support liquid glass. And I said, well, did you download the development version? Because it does. And so they were they were happy about that. So as it says on the bottom of the slide, new toolbar icons are also on the way. I'm the one who inflicted that on the world, and so we're gonna revamp that and have an actual professional do those designs as well. So be on the lookout for that. Probably getting ahead of myself here because you guys haven't sat through Roland's session yet, but if you do want to test out the releases that are leading up to 5.0, you can do that today. You can download, we have a 4.7.2 development release, and we're kind of using that for our development version number, and you can get that today. But this is the release schedule. I'm not going to read through the whole list, but you can kind of see that a whole bunch of stuff is at least planned. We'll see. Usually, I lay out a plan like this, and then things start out kind of along what you see on the sheet here, but they kind of diverge over time. So, I've made allowances for that, at least in the schedule. If you're really adventurous, there's something else you can do. If you open up Wireshark and pull up the preferences, you can see at the very bottom on the left, there's this advanced setting item that you can click, and that brings up this list of all the application's preferences, and you can go in and edit them directly. We have a bunch of preferences in Wireshark, and they won't all fit into the preferences dialog, and so we just kind of did the software developer thing and said, fine, we're just going to dump them all out and let you deal with it yourself. But if you search for the word channel, you can see there's a GUI.update.channel preference, and you can change that from stable to development, and then Wireshark will start offering you these development releases. But if, like the slide says, that's if you're really adventurous, maybe you just want to test it for a day and then flip back, or whatever, or you just have a development VM that you want to try this out. But we would like you to at least try it out and look for problems, because otherwise, we'll be pushing out something that isn't sufficiently tested. So, we'd like to avoid that. Speaking of releases, this past well, it was June 30th, we made the Wireshark 4.6.5 release. And it did not go well. In fact, it went horribly. And there are a number of reasons for that, and I'd like to kind of talk about that here. When 4.6.5 was released, as you can see on the slide, it was late. I try to release a new version of Wireshark about every 6 weeks and keep that cadence going. Because especially in the stable branch, we've accumulated bug fixes and we want to get them pushed out. But this time around, there are a couple of things that happened. One thing was external, something that the world inflicted on us, which is the fact that around late February, early March, people have been developing, AI's everywhere. People have been developing AI security scanning tools that will look at your source code and look for problems and security flaws. And prior to this early spring, all those tools were terrible. I mean, they stank on ice. We would get reports that somebody would go into, say, Cloud or whatever, or Gemini, and say, hey, look for security problems in Wireshark. And somebody I was talking to last night pointed out that the AI never says, I don't know. It'll give you an answer, or an answer-shaped object. So they'd say, hey, I want to find security flaws in Wireshark, and they'd use AI to try to look for it. And AI would happily say, okay, I found these 400 things. Well, not 400, but only 100. And they would forward that list onto us without doing any validation or verification. And they'd say, here you go, deal with this. And in a couple of cases, that's what we had to do. We had to go through this big list of bugs and say, okay, that's crap, that's bogus, that's crap, that's bogus. That has a little bit of validity, but all the rest of this is junk. And so up until, say, February, that was our reality. In February, things changed surprisingly quickly. AI tools got a whole bunch better, and they got a whole bunch better very quickly. And we started getting valid security reports, and so did everybody else. And, I don't know if at least on my work laptop, I have, I forget what the tool they use for endpoint management, but I have this little toolbar icon that says, hey, you need to update Slack, you need to update Visual Studio Code, you need to update Chrome every time I open my laptop lid, because over the past few months, people have not been, the influx of security reports has been such that people have been fixing them at a rapid pace and pushing out releases at a rapid pace. But the same is true for us. And so, we had all these security flaws that we had queued up, I think, 42 of them by the time 4.6.5 was rolling around. And I'll talk about this in detail on Thursday. But another problem we dealt with was we had hardware failure. When we build Wireshark's packages, we use, well, on the Windows side, we have instances up at Azure that we use to build our Windows packages. On the macOS side, we have a couple of systems that one of our developers runs for us, and one of his machines failed, and so we couldn't build installers that we could publish, at least through our automated system. And so for this release, I had to build them by hand, and that took up a lot of my time. And finally, there was this thing. I don't know if you've downloaded a recent version of Wireshark, but if you notice on the right side of the screen, there is now this information panel, which has various slides. And this feature landed in our master branch and was scheduled for 5.0, but I looked at it, and a few other people looked at it and thought, that's a pretty useful thing. Plus, that, as you can see, that first slide there is advertising SharkFest US 26, where you are all sitting right now. And the realization that hit very quickly was the fact that, okay, if we have this feature that's scheduled for the fall, we have an event that's before that in the summer, that's not really useful to advertise that event in the fall for something that already happened. So let's get this feature pushed out. And that kind of added, the problem was that when we did backport this feature, we failed to backport the feature, the preference setting that lets you disable this. So if you like this, that's great. If you don't, we want you to be able to shut it off, but we, unfortunately, for this particular release, didn't let you shut it off. And all these things kind of stacked up and made for a really ugly release. And I actually have a prop here. Let me get it up. Just as a bit of comparison, when I normally make a release, I'll, a couple of, 1 or 2 days before, I'll do some prep work, and that takes anywhere from half an hour to 4 hours, depending on how much administrative stuff I need to do. And then on the day of the release, I print out one of these. This is our release checklist, front and back, one sheet. And going through this checklist takes about 4 hours, and the thing that really takes 4 hours is a checklist item down here that says, wait for the builders to build the packages, and that maybe takes an hour or so, just because things take a while, especially on the Windows side. For the 4.6.5 release, it took me like 12 hours to get through this thing because because of all these security flaws that I had to catalog and having to manually build. I had to set up my local build environment to build these macOS installers and get them built, and it was just this ordeal. And we got it out. It was very clear very quickly that it was kind of an ugly release, and so we tried to remedy it as quickly as possible and got 4.6.6 out, I think 1 or 2 weeks later. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at here is we had a release that didn't go well at all, and I do take responsibility for that. It was ultimately my decision, and the decision was based mainly on the fact that we had all these security fixes to get out, because my primary goal is to make sure that we ship a product that is secure. So sorry about that. Now this next slide, sorry. I kept going back and forth whether or not to include this slide. Because I don't want anybody here or anybody watching the video to think that I'm talking directly about them. I'm not talking, I'm talking, the slide is referencing more a general reaction to what happened with the 4.6.5 release versus a particular individual's reaction. And the underlying problem here is one of mismatched expectations, and you don't solve mismatched expectations by putting up a slide full of smart-ass comments. So anyway, but I did want to get this kind of off my chest, because when we did release 4.6.5, there were a whole bunch of reactions to that information slide saying, hey, you put ads in Wireshark, how dare you? And I had a reaction to that, and this is my reaction. So I'm up here on the stage speaking, so I get to talk. There you go. But as it says on the slide, if you want to be upset about the sponsor slides, that's perfectly valid. We live in an age where somebody made up a term called enshittification, and they wrote a whole book about it, and people are talking about it because it's this wide-ranging phenomenon. And we want to avoid that as much as we can with Wireshark, and we do want you to be able to disable that information, the information portion on the welcome page. We do have that fixed, fortunately, but we didn't roll that out correctly. That was kind of a train wreck. If you make a living using Wireshark, that's wonderful. That's kind of the whole point of the foundation, is to enable people's, help them along their career path to make money using Wireshark. If you don't want to donate to the project, that's also great. Not everybody has to, but at the same time, at least my impression during all this controversy was that there are some people out there who match all three of these items, and I don't understand that line of thinking. You hate that we put ads in the product. You do make a living using the product, but you're also not contributing to helping the product along. Anyway, I'm going to stop complaining here and move on. What? Anyway, moving along. This is a slide showing all of our stats. I'm not going to read everything, but there are a couple of things I do want to point out. Wireshark is big. Depending on how, we use several different utilities to measure the size of our code base. And because we do that, we get different numbers from each one. And so the actual line count of our code base is kind of vague, but we have somewhere between 4 and 7 million lines of code, depending on how you measure, say, source code comments, or measure automatically generated code, because we do generate a lot of code. We get about, well, the slide says 1.5 million downloads a month, but we didn't do that this time around, because I had to delay a release, and if you have to delay a release, that affects our download counts. Most of the downloads we serve are for Windows. There's a respectable amount for Mac OS. I have no idea how many people use Wireshark on Linux because we just don't have access to the download stats for various Linux distributions. And on the Linux side, the distributions are the one that package up Wireshark and deliver it to their user bases, which we're grateful for and about. One of the things I do love is that each year the author count goes up. Last year it was 2,500, last year it's 2,400, this year it's 25. But we do regularly get contributions from people who want to make the product better and work on that. But I did run across an interesting stat a couple of weeks ago. The Wireshark installers are not our most popular download, meaning that if you look at our website stats and you take out everything that has to do with delivering HTML, there's one file that is really super popular that is not, doesn't have anything to do with our installers. Anybody want to guess what it is? The OUI file. Exactly. Man, you're sharp. I don't have a prize for you other than well wishes. The most popular file by far that we serve from Wireshark.org is the Ethernet manufacturer ID file, the OUI file. We take this in, the IEEE is the official standards body that manages this, but they distribute this information across a set of, I think, 4 or 5 files right now, and we kind of take that all together and glue it together and put it into one file that you can consume. And for some reason, it's very popular, which is fine, but it's popular to the point that the most recent stat I saw was that we get about 20 million downloads a month, which equates to, I think, 50 terabytes just for this text file. And I don't understand I don't understand the enthusiasm for this file, let me put it that way. A, because we only update it once a week, and B, if you're getting this fresh information with these brand new OUIs, those are OUIs that manufacturers just got. I don't think they have that shipping in any actual equipment yet. I don't know, I don't understand the urgency, let me put it that way, to get this information, but that's fine. I do have some updates for the foundation, but let me get a drink here real quick. If you're not familiar with the Wireshark Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit formed in the US to support Wireshark and its community. And the official statement, the official mission of the project, as it says on the slide, right now is to help as many people as possible understand their networks and systems, because we added StratoShark, as much as possible. And so the part of my job day to day is meeting with, say, Sherry and the core developer team and the foundation board and discuss how we can further that mission. At least that's what we should be doing, but we have sometimes issues pop up. But whether it's just networks or networks and systems, it is a worthwhile mission. And I say that because if you look around, even compared to, at least in my living memory, modern society has changed quite a bit over the past couple of decades. Modern society is defined basically by software running on things like this, or all of your devices talking to other software, whether that's locally or off in the cloud somewhere or whatever. And that's how we live our day-to-day lives. I don't know how many times a day I look at my phone to get relevant and pertinent information that affects what I'm doing at that time. Like, if I do road biking, and so I have this, I have an app that tracks my route, but I also have an app that tracks the wind, because where I live, the wind speed and direction can really affect your ride, and so that's really relevant information. Week before last, my daughter's moving from California to New York to go to grad school, and she and her roommate were finalizing the deal for their apartment. Not in New York, they were on a road trip down to Los Angeles, and they were in a car moving, making this deal to get this apartment off their phones, because modern society lets them do that. And I, up in Davis, was signing on as a guarantor for this loan, for the lease, and meanwhile, the actual broker's off in New York, and we were all able to work together to get this job done, and just because of the way modern society is built on software and networks. And I'm sure you can think of better examples than this. This is just the example that popped up in my head. And I bring this up because in order for this all to function, people need to take care of this. Systems and networks are not inherently fast and reliable and secure. If you just leave them alone, they don't stay, you can stand them up and make them initially fast and reliable and secure, but as soon as you do that, they instantly start degrading. And that's why your job is important, because as the people who take care of that, you basically underpin the technology that powers modern society. And by extension, the mission of the foundation is important because we have to support you. We have to make sure that you have the understanding to do your jobs correctly and the tools like Wireshark and StratoShark to do your jobs correctly. And so when we did set up the foundation, I was really excited about that because I do really strongly believe in this mission. I'm very passionate about this. So how do we go about achieving this? Well, we do a bunch of things. And I have, each item on that slide ends with ing because it's an action thing. But yeah, we do actively do stuff to help you. We host events like SharkFest. As you can see, we host education days and Wireshark meetups. We do participate in other events. FOSDEM is the Free and Open Source Developers European Meeting. It's a huge conference in Europe each year based around open source. And we've been participating in that for the past couple of years. This past February, I spoke at something called Wild West Hackenfest in Denver, and it was all about what I was talking about. One of the things is we've recently, and I'll talk about this next slide, but we've recently spun up a certification program, the Wireshark Certified Analyst, to mainly help you advance your career. Again, we're supporting you in doing this. We also, as the foundation, are the ones that pay for Wireshark's infrastructure. And Wireshark is a medium-sized open source project. At least that's the way I think about it. And the reason I say medium-sized is because if you do have an open source project, chances are you have it up at a place like GitHub or GitLab. These are forges. They are places that will host open source projects for you. And for most projects, everything you do within that project fits inside the confines of GitHub or GitLab. In our case, we don't quite fit. We expand beyond that. GitHub and GitLab have buttons that let you merge code and open an issue and start a discussion. Neither GitHub nor GitLab have a I want to talk to a lawyer button or an accountant. And so we have those types of expenses that we need to handle for the project because we have a trademark and all this legal stuff. But we're also not a large project. We are not funded. We're not like Chrome. We're not like Visual Studio Code and a bunch of other open source projects in that class that are key to the strategy of a major corporation and therefore get funding commensurate with that. So we have to find funding ourselves to take care of all of our expenses. Anyway, I'll stop talking about that for a bit. What I want to talk about right now is the fact that, as I said on the last slide, we have this certification program. We started it up a year ago. I say we, but the grunt work was actually done by Ross Burgess and Chris Greer, and they've done an excellent job. They made a point to make the exam very rigorous because they don't want it just to be a throwaway exam. And the whole point here is to help, to at least from my perspective, the point here is to provide a signal. And that signal goes in two directions. If you are if you're a network engineer and you want to advance your career, if you want to get a raise or you want to get a better job somewhere, the WCA is a signal that you know your stuff, you know what you're doing. And if you are an employer looking to hire somebody, it is a signal that goes in the opposite direction, saying, if you want to work here, you need to be operating at this level. And I'm probably the wrong person to talk about this because I stopped being a network engineer when I started writing Wireshark, and that was a long time ago. So if Tony, if you'd like to, we do have somebody here who has gotten the certification, and he can talk a bit more directly about what he thinks about it.
Thank you, Gerald. I was surprised to learn this event that there's only 50 certified people. I really thought by the time I took it, it would be in the thousands based on the popularity of the project, right? How many people use Wireshark? This is a small fraction in this room. But anyhow, it was something that I saw, I think, last year's SharkFest. I didn't attend, but I was following in the Discord, and I saw, oh my God, they have this certification. This is great. Let me try it. And this morning, I found my old blog, and I looked at a blog post that I made back in 2022. I came to SharkFest, and I forget, what was that, Missouri? Or was that California?
Where was 2022?
Anyhow, I found my old blog post, and I noted like all these amazing things I learned about Wireshark, even though some of them were super simple. And it was just a reminder to myself that this is 2026, so I've only been in the community about maybe 5 or 6 years, and I was really just starting out back then. And I'll tell you a small story is I'm a network engineer, right? I came through the Cisco Netacad, I got my CCNA, CCNP, and I got my CCIE, and that was a big crowning achievement for me, okay? And I went to a customer site where I had some of my teammates working, and I just showed up there just to kind of shake hands and meet people and attend some meetings and stuff. And they were like, hey, Tony, while you're here, can you take a look at this for us? I said, okay. And they're like, we don't know if it's a networking problem or not. So they said they spent a week checking routers, switches, firewalls, right? Validating everything that they can from a configuration point of view. They said, it's not a network problem that we can see. But the customer sent us this packet capture. Can you take a look at it? And here I was, a freshly minted CCIE, looking at a packet capture in Wireshark and just being like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm looking at. The Cisco CCIE is a great training and everything for configuring devices, but for really understanding the flow of the data through the network from a user to a server is when I realized I really need to dive into Wireshark. So I looked up some Chris Greer's classes on previous SharkFest talks that were on the YouTube channel, and just the simple 2-talk TCP, I realized I don't know anything about TCP. I know SYN, SYNAC, ACK, okay? That's about as far as most books go. And so I realized from Chris that there's a lot to learn. And so I'm here saying that, I'm not an expert by any means. I'm learning, still learning. I learned things on day one from Ross. Just something simple in Wireshark that I didn't know. So we're always learning. But I took this exam last year, and it was a really good affirmation or reaffirming the stuff that I have learned from SharkFest and all of the materials and things that are available over the years. So it's a very, very doable exam. It is not, I will tell you, it's not about what menu would you find this option under. It's not about memorizing the UI. Really, they give you a lot of screenshots of packet analysis of an open Wireshark window and ask you relevant questions about the packets in the list. So that really leans more towards your understanding of the packets themselves, not so much the Wireshark interface. So, that should really be, I think, everyone's goal is understanding the packets. The tool is great, but the exam is not about memorizing features of Wireshark. It's about really analyzing that traffic and showing your proficiency. It's really been awesome. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry, is there any question? Anything about the exam? Yeah, go ahead.
Are there any practice exams around that we can?
Yes. Yep, right on the same site that you registered for.
Can you repeat the question?
I will. So yeah, the question was, are there any practice exams? And what we've done is we took a lot of the questions that weren't quite right for the final version of the exam, and we put them into a practice exam. And I believe it's $30 to get the practice exam, and it's all the same questions, but you get the questions and an explanation of what each answer is in the end. So you can go through it one time, you get all the answers, and so yes, there is a practice exam. It's really just the questions that weren't quite good enough for the actual one. And that's on the WebAssessor site, so webassessor.com/Wireshark.
I'll just say one last thing. In case anyone is like being timid about trying the exam, it is not an expert level exam. It is not I've been doing deep network analysis for 20 years and this is the certification that proves it. It is an analyst level, right? It just proves your proficiency within the tool itself and your understanding of basic TCP, UDP, TLS type traffic. So yeah, it's nothing scary. Cool.
Thanks. We are running a promo. You can use this code SFUS26 to get a discount on the exam. I'm sorry? $100 off. Oh, $100 off. That's a lot. Cool. That is a bargain. I will. One more thing about the certification that I'd like to point out is that something that I learned from the process, basically just by watching the process happen, was the fact that you would think, okay, I'm going to make this exam for some certification. All I have to do is make up some questions and put them on a website, and we're good to go. That is not the case. This took a lot of work. I know that Chris and Ross dumped a whole bunch of work getting these questions correct and right and relevant. And once they got their question set up and running, that set of questions had to go through a gauntlet, and the gauntlet was a set of Wireshark core developers who have very strong opinions about protocols, and so that was part of the process. And this is a very high quality certification, at least in my opinion, and a lot of work went into it, and it shows. And thank you, Chris and Ross, for doing that. Quick update on the foundation finances. Just before I put up the next slide, I don't want you to yell out a number. Just very quickly, I want to ask you what you think our income and expenditures were in 2025. Like I said, you don't think about it too much. Just think of two numbers, because they're going to be wrong. The actual numbers were, we brought in 633 grand last year and spent 640, almost 649. The second number is bigger than the first, which is not good. The foundation is in a state to where we are we started out in this bootstrap mode, and I don't know if you've ever been part of a startup company, you kind of have to get things bootstrapped and maybe not make very much money initially, and that's kind of the phase we're trying to emerge from, let me put it that way. But I will say, as part of the finances, the vast majority of the money that we spend each year is on SharkFest, and I'll go into that in the detail in the next slide. But conferences just take money to run. Some of that money that we bring in goes towards Wireshark's actual Wireshark infrastructure. We do have a bunch of servers that we have instances up in the cloud, and we have build systems and all this stuff. And all these little expenditures like code signing certificates. I mean, one of the things that I do to ensure that you have a good experience is make sure that our Windows and macOS installers are signed. That has a cost. You have to pay Microsoft. Well, in our case, we pay Apple and Microsoft, but we want to ensure that when you download that installer, that the operating system doesn't complain at you, just because that's a barrier to entry, and we want to eliminate that. So yeah, there are little expenses like that. And a whole bunch of other infrastructure stuff that we pay for. But yeah, the vast majority of our expenses are SharkFest. And the thing is, we're kind of treading water right now, and one of the frustrating things is that even though we have enough money to kind of continue to exist as we are, there's so much more that we could be doing. And so yeah, that's something we're kind of focusing on and have been focusing on recently, and you know, trying to figure out how to further the project financially. Just one thing about conferences, they are hella expensive. They were expensive before COVID, but COVID did something. I think COVID broke the brains of every hotel out there and convention center. Because when COVID hit, there was this big wave of you know, companies that had planned events. COVID hit, and all the companies said, well, we're not having this, you know, we have to cancel. I remember, you know, we had a SharkFest planned, you know, we're still at Riverbed, and dealing with the hotel at that time, the hotel said, no, you have to pay for this, and we said, nobody's gonna show up, this is an act of God. We had to get lawyers involved and say, look, we're not paying this contract, you know, we're sorry. And so, since then, whenever you want to book an event somewhere, the venue will say, okay, we need all the money up front and we need a crap ton of money. And so that is our reality that we live with now. So when we do, well, I say we, but Sherry's the one that does all this work, thank you very much. And when she finds a venue, you know, they demand all the money up front. And so we have to pay for this venue before anybody has actually registered for the conference. And so, again, we have this number that we have to put out that we don't, you know, get until much later on. And so, you know, part of our expenses are just interest because we have to finance this, you know, through like a line of credit and credit cards and whatnot. The other thing is, you know, food's expensive, and just inflation happened. For whatever reason, I don't understand this, but bandwidth is somehow rare and precious at these things. We got some insane quote initially for, should I tell the number?
Sure, it was like something like 6 megabits per second, $35 per person per day.
I don't know if you heard, but the quote that we got was, to deliver 6 megs to each of you, 6, not 60 or 600, 6. Per day was, per person was $35. And I don't know who, you know, we were talking about this and somebody made I'm usually the one that makes the smart ass comments. I didn't make this one this time around, but somebody said, well, why don't we just buy a bag of prepaid Sims and hand them out? But yeah, these are the things that we deal with when setting up conferences. Again, I say we, but it's mostly Sherry that takes on this burden. And you know, this is just part of the things that we do as the foundation to further that mission that I was talking about. And as far as the current status of the project goes, like, you know, like I was saying earlier, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, that triangle with this, with basic needs and then actualization and all this other stuff. But I don't know if there's a nonprofit version of that, but if there is, you know, we have the kind of little bottom layers of that triangle colored in, and we're missing the peak. And that's kind of what we've been focusing on recently. And, you know, kind of part of getting the foundation bootstrapped means that Sherry and I have been in what I call heads down mode, where we're just, you know, looking at the screen and typing stuff and sending emails and stuff, and focused on a whole bunch of little tiny details that hit us all day long, every day. And what we've kind of needed to do and what we've been missing is being in heads up mode, where we lift our head and look at the horizon and say, okay, we are here, where do we want to be? And we've kind of been doing that lately and been able to do that lately. And so what I'm kind of getting to is the fact that one of the things we've talked about and are actively working on right now is basically updating the leadership of the foundation board and the foundation itself to bring in more revenue so that we can actually do the things that further that mission of the foundation and just do bigger and better things. I'm despite going through all this, getting this up and running. I'm still passionate about this project and about the foundation and about our mission and our ability to help all of you. So we should have more information about this soon as time goes on, so I would encourage you to stay tuned. At this point, I'd like to ask the core developers to come up. This is the portion of the talk. My keynotes at SharkFest always have the same format. I kind of complain about stuff, and then the core developers come up and introduce themselves. And when you do download Wireshark, it's because due to the work of people like this. I mentioned earlier that we have had contributions from 2,500 people over the time, but there is a set of core developers, who some of us are up on the stage here, who take those code contributions and review them and make sure that they look good, and then actually are the ones who add that to the code base. And so,
hi everybody. My name is Pascal. I'm from France. I've been contributing to Wireshark since 2008. Before that, I started playing with Ethereum in 1999, but it was another century. I became a core developer in 2012. I've been contributing since, mostly in wireless protocols, because that's what my day job. And as usual, I really thank you all to come here. It's really enjoyable to meet you all and to share our knowledge all together.
So hello, my name is Joachim. I come from Sweden. I've been developing in Wireshark for 10 years now and been core developer for 2 years. And I got stuck in this because I had to complain on Anders here a lot, because we were working in the same company, but he said, solve it yourself, and that's what I've been doing for 10 years now. So.
I am Jasper from Germany. I'm here because Roland forced me. I haven't written a single line of code for Wireshark yet. They tell me as soon as I write one line, I will be designated core developer. Apparently this now happened without the line.
I looked it up. You have a commit in the repo. It was a documentation change. So
okay.
that counts for me.
Yeah, so they got me up on stage to actually have me say a couple of words. I'm honored to be here. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you are all here, that the room is so full, and we were going to have a good time, I hope.
So I'm Anders Broman. I used to work for Ericsson. I'm actually retired now, but it's so fun to work on Wireshark, so I keep doing it as a hobby. I've also been active in the telecom area of Wireshark dissectors mostly, but also done some stuff in the core software. Mainly doing reviews of merge requests these days.
I'm John Thacker. Probably using Wireshark at least 15 plus years. Been a core developer for about 4 years, I guess, at this point. And I kind of work on pretty much anything in the code base.
Roland Knall from Austria, Salzburg. Those of you who think of where it is on the map, Sound of Music, that's basically my hometown. Never ask any Austrian about Sound of Music, we cannot recite a single thing. Have been doing Wireshark and stuff like with Wireshark for the better part of, I don't know, 20 years, 15 years, something like that. During university, we had a horrible CCNA course, and after that course, I said I will never do anything with Wireshark and networking again in my life. That lasted all about 1 year when somebody told me, you cannot see those packets on a network, that's not possible. And this is something I really don't work well with. Did some dissector work. A few years later, I needed some software code, and again, there was a tool, a presentation given at SharkFest at some point by Mike Kershaw and Mike Ryan about how can you call a Python script to use, I think it was Python at that point, to use as a network interface to capture from. And Mike told me when I contacted him multiple times until he responded, because he thought, who's that crazy guy? well, their code is shit and it's not gonna be any kind of form of distributable. And I was like, again, don't tell me that, it's just inciting. I've been a code developer now since 2016, I think, so it's 10 years, hey, cool. And I mostly operate under the modus that I fix shit that annoys me, which nowadays is most of that in the UI. So if you have shit that annoys you, then annoy me and I will fix it for you, or we will fix it for you. That's basically how it works. I mean, beer and chocolate is also accepted form of bribery, but beyond that, we're gonna talk in the next session about how we do it. Just glad to be here and just glad to see that many people showing up to our own little family gathering.
I'm Gerald. I started a weekend project that kind of got out of hand. No, seriously, one of the really surprising things early on in the project was when I made the first release of Ethereal in July '98. You know, I put out this blob of source code and published that to the world, and made it open source. And I think that either the next day or the day after, I started getting contributions literally from around the world. I mean, I think one of the first contributions was Richard in Australia, and those contributions haven't stopped. And if you're wondering what I do kind of day to day, what I do day to day is try to keep up with these guys. And we do have such an active and generous development team, and one of the things that keeps me energized in the morning and gets me in front of the computer in the morning is the fact that I do get to work with each of these people.
Especially keeping up with John, right?
Yeah.
We have an internal John clock. When a new feature a new bug request comes in, if you're not fast enough, John will have to patch for it. So if you want to contribute to that, beat him.
My last bug report in 20 minutes.
Yeah. 20 minutes, that's long. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Yeah, how many core developers are there in total? So, how many aren't here?
Okay, so the question was how many core developers are there in total and how many are not here?
In total, I don't have an exact count right now, but in total, the definition one of the definitions of a core developer is somebody who can actually make commits to our repository. I mean, we have a repository up at GitLab. That's where we do most of our hosting, but not anybody can just throw code in there. They can submit it and say, here, can you take a look at it? But the people who can actually put the code in the repository are standing up here. But there are, I think, 40, 50, 60 of us. But not all those people are active at any given time. I think the active core developer count is probably closer to a dozen or two.
Yeah.
On any given week, let me put it that way.
And sometimes some of those people who are not generally active, if a protocol that they're particularly interested in wrote, they will submit fixes even though they haven't been super active in the last decade or more.
Yeah. And also defining active is a little bit of an open question because just code alone is not only active. For instance, that's one of the main reasons why Jasper is standing here. Being a voice in the development, being a voice in going forward, being a voice in the community and helping us out steering this whole thing, there are a few people additionally to that. So when you say...
Or like updating documentation and so forth, because we all know that there are a lot of us who are very good at developing but who enjoy writing code and don't enjoy writing documentation, but documentation is extremely important.
So they say. So when you define the role not so much as a core developer but as a core member of the team, it includes people like Jasper, Ross, Chris. They're very much highly valued active members of the core team as well. Sake, yeah, Sake, but Sake is a core developer, sir. Any other question?
Is AI changing your practices at all?
Is AI changing the practices of it all?
Okay, AI can mean a lot of things. When AI was first kind of emerging as a thing, the first thought was, okay, can I use AI to analyze packets? And people kind of do that, and with varying degrees of success, and it's getting better over time. AI can also mean generating code, and and well, you want to?
Yeah, I will talk about that in the next session on what this means and what this means for us as a community. and how we are handling this currently. This might not be the best approach. This might not be the last way we do it, but it's how we do it currently. And I will show you.
Well, I think the short answer is yes. I've just used it a little bit, but it seems very useful to use for coding. So yes, it's going to be a big impact.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I would say AI has definitely allowed people that are users of the project that have not submitted a lot of merge requests before to submit merge requests. I would say that the merge requests they've submitted using AI are not worse in quality than a lot of the merge requests that we've gotten that we had to review anyway, but it does increase.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. It varies, but I mean, there was always a variance in the quality that we get from other people. It has meant that there are a larger quantity of outside merge requests, and that means more upon the core developers who review the code. There's more code to review. Personally, I enjoy writing code more than reviewing, so it's a little bit less fun for me.
And great, now I have to lead a few slides from my next presentation.
The thing about AI is, one of the central, because it's the new hot technology, there's this kind of tendency to use AI because it's AI. But when I look at it, my question is this going to help us make a better product or a more useful product or a more secure product? And if it does, great. If it doesn't, then what are we doing?
Any other questions? No?
All right.
Okay.
Anybody wanted to say anything? Or okay, one.
We are kind of dreading the next part.
No, I don't know if I don't know how much of this is making it out to you, but standing up here is kind of a sad time right now because normally when we're up here on the stage, there's another person who usually joins us up here, and that would be Graham Boyce, and he, I can't understate what an effect he has had on the project. He was a core developer from very early on. He was one of the people who actually got Ethereal running on Windows and expanded our user community. He was very active in the project itself and in the governance. He's one of the people who really pushed us to get the foundation because he was very adamant about the core developer team having autonomy within the project. And unfortunately, he passed away. It's been about a month.
A month ago. Yeah.
So we just wanted to take a moment to say that we miss Graham, we love him, and it is kind of a sad time for us. I'm sorry to bring everybody down.
Yeah. The thing about us and the thing about how we operate as a group is, and we used to say this in the past, and we always say this when we come together like this, and those of you who have been here before experienced it and saw it, this is not your usual conference. This is not people just showing up, getting some information, going away again. These are actually really friends meeting, and these are actually a family and a tight-knit community that enjoys spending time with each other. There are all kind of different people, different persons, and so sometimes it makes it especially when you go to not only to the conference, but when you go to the project sites and when you want to ask for help, it makes it especially challenging to get all those informations in a gear. And Graham, particularly on askwireshark.org, many of you might have come across him there. He was a very good person on getting people to the knowledge they needed without them feeling being pushed or dropped in that direction, but he guided you to getting that knowledge. He was a very integral part of all of us. He was a very integral part of this community. And I think it goes without saying that we are, although we knew it was coming, we're more than devastated that it happened. So yeah, if you see us a little bit somber this week, this is why. Thank you.
So as a kind of a final note, one of the things that struck me earlier this year was that a lot of what we do, not just the developers, but everybody in this room, a lot of what we do is centered on reducing the amount of magic in the world while still keeping things magical. And this may sound, well, people are thinking, "What? You're an idiot. Those words mean the same thing." But what I'm trying to get at here is that we have all this technology around us that is wondrous and lets us do these amazing things. And if you took somebody from within living memory and showed them what you can do with your smartphone, they would think it was magic. But all of your jobs is to, but none of it actually is. Networks are not magic. Systems aren't magic. Even AI. AI is probabilistic. It is not magic. But all of our jobs is are to some extent or another, to pierce through that layer of what appears to be magic and get to the actual mechanisms that are running underneath and make sure that those mechanisms are operating correctly. But at the same time, there is a magical aspect to this, as you can see, the relationships that we've formed. The fact that I make a living giving away software is magical. But more importantly, like I said, all the relationships that we've formed with each other that have formed over the years is magical. And the fact that we do have this community is magical. And I love this job. I do think that the foundation and Wireshark are great and important things, but it's not because of me. It's because of all of you, because of the people who use the product and the people who teach everybody how to use this, and the developers, and Sherry, who puts on this conference. That work is absolutely magical, and I love being a part of this, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you very much.